Hello, everyone. Welcome to my POA podcast, Black Hand and Beyond. This is episode number 78. Again, we haven't missed an episode this year. Every Tuesday night in 2024, we've made one. It's getting tough to do that. Tonight was a little challenging. Yesterday was a Monday, and then for some reason today was another Monday at work. But we're here, and we're going to talk about a subject that's near and dear to my heart, Kiddo Tough. I'm the one that named him that. My dad and I used to argue about that. He said he named him, but I was actually the one that named him. So we'll talk about that story too. So that's pretty cool. We have a couple sponsors tonight. Of course, we have the in-house one. Come join the family. So that's Jackson's Auto Family, or Jackson's of Enid. Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram. If you're looking for a car, we can ship it all over the country. We also can get you financed if you need to. And some people live in Oklahoma and close. It's not too bad a drive up here to Enid, Oklahoma. So, all right. Hello, Charlie Phillips. You're the winner tonight. You're the first one to check in, I think. So, and you get an applause. That's what you win. So, sorry, we got a low budget on the show. So anyway, our main sponsor tonight, besides Jackson's Auto Family, is Albie Horn. And there she is with her beautiful 2022 filly. She's a 2-year-old now, and she was a baby and a yearling in some of these pictures. We'll be talking about her a little bit in the middle. Good evening, Terry. Iowa's checking in strong tonight. Got 2 different Iowa breeders and promoters on tonight. So Albie just wanted to support the podcast. She's always been a good supporter of the podcast and watches it. She's didn't really need to promote, she's showing and stuff. She's in North Carolina, I believe. She sent me some license plates. That was cool. And she just said, she wanted to help out with a sponsor. So if you guys want to help out and sponsor, I have 3 more sponsors besides her. One of them just checked in. Tracy, hello, Tracy. Dean's here from Iowa, too. Hello. Another hello. So I don't know who that is yet. Might be my wife, might be Jan. We got a lot of viewers that watch every week, of course, and then a lot of people that watch after the fact. So, and I'm surprised every week when I talk to people, they're nervous about coming on as a guest. Tonight I don't have a guest because I'm talking about a subject that I can talk about. So I could have had a guest, of course, about Kiddo Tough and some of all his relatives. We're going to talk about some of his ancestors too, and I'm just going to sit here and show pictures and talk about the horse and some of the stuff. And now, if you're not mentioned, I'm sorry. I'm not doing it. There's no malice. I'm not trying to hurt anybody or leave anybody out. It's just I can only get so much in, and sometimes my brain I forget certain ones, just like pictures. I had a scramble today. People were nice enough to get me pictures. I know I didn't get them all on Facebook, but I got a lot of them on there, and some of it I didn't have time to put all the descriptions. So I played a little thing, said, you pick which one it is. But, all kinds of people sent me pictures. Charlene Shinkleton sent me pictures of her rough and tough daughter. And then, of course, they had Lovey out of her, guaranteed tough love. And the rough and tough daughter is Doc's I'm Not Tough. So there's a picture of her. Then there's some rough and tough offspring. Jackie sent me a bunch of Kiddo Bounce babies. Of course, Kiddo Bounce is an own son. And then she sent me some other stuff too, like a Star Kid daughter that she has as a broodmare had, and she's played a part in her program. So more people are checking in. That's good. Hello, Uncle Kent. Well, I got family watching, so that's cool. We're getting a good little crowd here tonight. So before we get started about Kiddo too much, again, sponsorships. We had a bad week in sponsorships for the Congress. I don't think we got any last week. Remember, it was episode 77 degrees outside, and we only had 77 to go. Well, I think we're probably close to that. I don't think we picked up much this week. So please contact Monica or myself or the office, mainly Monica, if you want to sponsor something. Time's running down, so we want to get those classes sponsored. 226 classes is a lot of classes to sponsor. I believe that's probably the biggest Congress ever as far as number of classes. So we want to get everyone sponsored, and then we have some specialty stuff that most of that is sponsored already. But any sponsorship is grateful. So let's go over to the screen here. And again, thank you, Albie and TC Bling It On Weedo. That's her 2-year-old POA filly, gorgeous mare there. You can see the quite a body on her and just a nice mover, and the face mark. I remember when she was born, Tracy always does a good job marketing her babies. As you see this today or yesterday, she sold one that they're usually still wet when she sells them. So, and I put a bunch of photos on here for tonight, and hopefully you can see all these on Facebook. You can always go back and look at them. So I'm just going to go to the original one here, the first set, which is right here. So that's the second one. There we go. So there we go. There's little baby kiddo. That's kiddo at a couple months old. Probably might not even be 2 months old. He might only be a month. Not long after this picture was taken, my dad surprised me. I used to let the babies out and I'd just hang out with them. Sometimes I would, if it was still spring or if it was fall and they weren't weaned yet, I would maybe do homework, or I'd just sit on the barn floor. We had a cement aisle way. Dad cemented in the gutters. It was a dairy barn, and he took out all the stanchions and all the feeders and stuff and built really nice box stalls, and then he put in concrete where the gutters were, right where kiddo's front legs are there. Would have been a gutter originally. So not long after this picture was taken, my chair went away and little black bucket there, and a red feeder was put up like you would put in the stalls. He put one outside. We had them inside so the babies could eat, and I think there's a group picture here of them eating. There you go. That's right before. So they had water, and sometimes I'd even go in the house and just leave them for a while, leave them hang out. And this picture's pretty cool. Kiddo Tuff's the one by the little round water tank there, of course, the few spot. And then the leopard filly is Ruby Tough Dots. She became a national champion. And then the little red colt in the middle grew up to be about 56 inches. He was actually Kiddo's uncle because he was by Tough to Beat, Kiddo's grandpa. And then he was out of a quarter mare we bred to Tough to Beat. And then the big colt on the end would be a half brother to the two in the background. He was by my cousin's mare that we had at our place for a while. She was a short quarter horse mare, and then by Chip a Tough. So 3 of them in the picture are by Chip, and one's by Chip's dad, East Acres Tough to Beat. So, but you see the black bucket again. We hadn't upgraded to the red thing that a lot of people come to know. And like the Crisco Kid, he would have ate out of the operation there, just the red feeder, and other ones too, like Bet on Bounce, Susie Tough Dots. There was others too that grew up there in that place, that rock barn. So there's Kiddo as a yearling, and I just want to say a few facts about him. I'm going to kind of jump around a little bit. There's really no set rules how to go. I did not know that we had a refund. Dairy barn. Okay. Tracy had a dairy barn in New York. Yep. We also had the big old, what do you call them? Poop bucket, the big thing on the rail. We pulled all the rails off. I think my brothers did that, and there was wheels, that went on it, and it was a huge old bucket, and then you dumped it out in the back. And because if you went too far and broke the block off, the huge bucket would fly off the so you always knew if one of the brothers was mad because they might do that, but then the joke was on them because they'd have to replace it. So, and that took, the tractor and everything else to lift it back up. So some of the things, that made Kiddo Tuff a legend, of course, he's in the Hall of Fame, and he was a chapter in my book. He was the youngest stallion to sire a grand champion stallion, and I always said that would probably hold because it's hard for a weanling to win grand champion stallion. Well, now 2 weanlings have done it, but their sires weren't that young. Kiddo was 2 years old when he bred a Doc's mare. Doc Demers used him, and we used him first, and then Doc came and got him and bred him to a couple mares, and Rough and Tough was Kiddo Tuff's second foal, and he became a grand champion as a yearling and a 2-year-old. So that means Kiddo was only 4 years old when his son was grand champion. So that's just one of those unique records. And another thing I've noticed over the years, 4 of his sons have become Select Sire Futurity Champion sires. So of course 3 of them are pretty well-known sires. 2 of them are in the Hall of Fame. 1 will be eventually, but that's Doc's Rough and Tough, CR Star Kid, and then of course Kiddo Bounce got a late start as a breeding horse, about 9-10 years old when he got going, but he's got a Hall of Fame career going, I would say, at his age. And then Foolin' who wasn't used very long. He was bred by the Bruners of Fall Creek, Wisconsin. He was out of a Double L Dickens' daughter. You know, they bred the straw ponies, but they had him for a while, and he ended up producing Tough Girl in Town. Of course, a lot of people know her. There was a double tough daughter back in the 70s named Toughest Girl in Town, but this is a whole different one just named Tough Girl in Town. And of course, Aaron Casper showed her, and then she's Aaron Jerry now, and had a couple good babies. And Pulse is in town, and then in Pulse's Uptown Girl. Of course, those are famous POAs out of that mare. So the reach, the fingers go out a long ways of the Kiddo Toughs. I can't even keep track of it. I used to, when we had the sale, I'd try to get the sale, go through the sales catalog and see how many Kiddo Toughs were in there. And some of them I missed, because you start getting grandsons of Rough and Tough that were having babies and stuff like that, and it was off the pedigree. I might even miss it, or a mare. So another thing that set Kiddo aside pretty much was, of course, he was a sire of sires. That was a big deal. He was a great sire himself. He was a sire of champions, of show horses, geldings. A lot of his sons were gilded because they just moved so good, and they should be anyway. You know, we're not a stallion strong breed. And then, of course, one of the things, maybe the most important thing, is he ended up being a broodmare sire as well. So if you can become a sire of sires, a broodmare sire, and a sire of show horses, all three, that's how you become really famous. And his foals have won, you know, close to 200 classes at the national show. Last time I checked, I haven't updated it in 3 years, but he's still sitting in second place because the ones below him haven't went up high enough. They're getting closer, but he was first for a lot of years. And then the Silver Kid, his grandson, passed him up. He's over 200 wins, and Kiddo's sitting there probably around the 170, 180 mark in second place. So there's some fun facts I just thought I'd throw out there before I get into all these pictures. And sometimes, I know last week I forgot some facts because I had a great conversation with Steve. I didn't realize Steve was going to call in. I was hoping he would. But then, you know, I'm driving home, or I'm laying in bed at night going, oh man, I was going to tell this story, I was going to tell that story, and I forgot. So sometimes it's tough to get these stories in. So and we will talk about Kiddo's first foal, of course, the Crisco Kid. His first two foals born were the Crisco Kid and Doc's Rough and Tough, and they're both in the Hall of Fame. So I know that happens sometimes in the quarter horse industry and other breeds, but when your first two foals become that famous, a lot of people want to get a shot at that breeding, or want to get one of those foals. So there's my dad in Austin, Minnesota. That was a group of East Acres Chippewa foals or horses we had there, and Kiddo just happened to be one of them. He's a yearling there. We were pretty young at show and still there. Here's just a photo snapped in the barn. I believe Joan took both these photos, Joan Schultz. This one, he don't look as good as he actually did. He never took really great pictures, you know, even his head, it was hard. He had such a beautiful head, and he didn't have glowy eyes. It just always did that in the pictures, a lot of pictures. And he didn't have a mark on his leg there. That's just a dirty mark. I probably didn't get his stall clean. But here's the picture that really helped advertise him. Oh, I'm not showing pictures. I'm sorry. So let me go back. People will be calling in. They'll be texting. That's good. I want you guys to bust me when I make a mistake. So you've seen these. So we'll go back. There's the picture that was on the screen for a long time. That's him as a yearling. And like I said, we just got into POAs about 82. So this was about 4 or 5 years into us being in POAs. And Kiddo had such great balance, and a lot of these pictures don't show it. He was probably 3 in this picture. And you see the water closet back there. That's for a water tank. And you see the old rock barn with the dad used chipboard for stalls, plywood, and then 2x6s for the gates. So this is the picture that I said really set Kiddo apart. This is after Kiddo was sold. So I watched him be born in 1986. I believe it was in April. And he ended up being 29949 was his registration number. I still remember that. Of course, it was T when he was born. We had a pretty big foal crop in 86. That was our biggest at the time. And by far, it was our best at the time, or at that time. And it was just a great foal crop. And he was one of them. Of course, we showed him a bunch as a baby. We showed at almost every Minnesota show that year. And he never won his class. Two of our own colts beat him several times, and I just kept showing him Arnie Marker showed that one red colt for us a couple times because he was by his stallion, and Susie Schultz showed the Chipperoo colt out of the quarter mare in Chippewa, and those guys would beat up on little kiddo. He wasn't the biggest, but he wasn't that small either. But his head was still, it was kind of chiseled. And, Les Boomhauer always talked about he wanted the pony, the Appaloosa pony, the cross between the quarter horse and the Arabian cross. Well, kiddo has some Arabian in him, registered Arabian. Then he also has a lot of quarter horse, famous old ranch quarter horse like King Ranch and stuff. We'll be talking about that. And Leo, of course, he's got that in him too. But all his grandparents were POAs, so that's what made him shorter. He was a true 54. When Leonard Lewis did his permanent height card, I think he just stuck a stick on him 55, but he really, when he was 3 or 4 years old, he was 54, and when he was older, he was, he'd shrunk a little, but he was always 54 under. So here he is when after Veronica Caswell sold him. So I'm jumping the gun a little bit. That's what pictures do to you a little bit. But this shows off his head. This is in Tulsa. Of course, that's Veronica hugging Jackie Guthrie there. And then, of course, Danielle Kruger and her dad Gordon. It was a partnership between Jackie and the Krugers, bought kiddo together. They both had bred to him before that with success. And, of course, they were both friends of ours. The Krugers were from Minnesota like us, and then we'd bought horses from Jackie before, mares and stuff. So they were both friends of ours. So we'd told them about kiddo, and, of course, when Doc used them, it helped. So we had kiddo, and he was born in 1986. And then, we never wanted to get rid of him, but things happened. We had to get rid of all of our POAs, most of them, in 89. We farmed out a couple mares and was able to save them for a little while, at places. But then we ended up selling those, and we got back in it after, I was right in that area time frame when I was like 16, 17. So I wasn't able to help out as much like as an earner, as a money earner. So when I got out of school, got out of college, and we got another place in Dassel, Minnesota. It was about probably 18 miles or less from where I grew up, and it was near where Caswell's was from. We got back into POAs. But so we sold kiddo to our farrier, who was Veronica's husband, Gordon Caswell. Him and my dad became great friends before he bought kiddo even. And they'd shown Appaloosas, and they had the bounce horses in Appaloosas. They'd shown Leo Bounce, and then his son, who was an Appaloosa racehorse named Leo Bounce Jr., and then his son, another Bounce, who they actually took to Oklahoma City to the World Show and stuff like that. And they showed him. I think he stood grand like 33 times at state shows, and they won men's and women's Western Pleasure on him back in the day. That would have been the early 80s. So they were well-known App people. Of course, Gordy was one of the most famous farriers in the upper Midwest, especially Minnesota. He was well-known. He had an Uga horn on his truck. So when he knew we were going to he tried to buy kiddo's mother for a long time, and then when he found out we were getting rid of kiddo, he made a deal with my dad and got him a very good deal on him, put it that way. But that way we knew where he was. Well, unfortunately, Gordy passed away in 1992, and then she held on to him for a while, Veronica, and her son Larry came and helped her with the place, Larry and his wife Don, and but she decided to sell kiddo. Doc Nemmers had leased him again and bred some mares to him, and she sold him at the sale. That's where this picture was taken in 1993, and I think he brought like $5,000, which was a lot of money in 93. It wasn't the record, but you gotta keep in mind kiddo was still pretty young. He was about 8 years old, but Rough and Tough had already won Grand Champion Stallion, so that helped him out. So, and this is him, I believe, either at Kruger's or Jackie's. This might be at Jackie's, that red barn there, and with the show halter on. He wasn't showing much after he got older, not because of height or anything. It was just he was used as a breeding horse. So he ended up standing grand about 5 times as a yearling, and I think he was only beat once by a baby, but he never went to a national show or a regional show. And of course I always laugh because when he got older, not that old even, he had a big neck, big heavy neck, and a lot of people would pick on him about that. Not a lot, but and then as he was foundered a couple times, one time when he was leased out, and then another time after Gordy had passed away. They had some people doing chores there, and they didn't quite know the feed schedules and stuff, and he ate a little, got a little sick, and he ended up with a club foot. And when he was an older horse and I was trying to keep him breeding probably longer than he should have been, the one veterinarian told me, he goes, you guys are going to laugh about this. I think Kiddo was 21 at the time. He goes, he said, we recommend with that club foot that you usually gild a stallion. And I said, he wasn't born with that club foot. So that happened later, and I said, he's had 130 some babies and a lot of them are champions. So I think he's all right. So, but he was just doing his job, but I always thought that was funny. That's one of those stories. So of course, here's his Hall of Fame plaque. He did go into the Hall of Fame very early as a young horse. He's born in 86. So he went in, he was inducted in 2001. So what was that, 15? He was 15 when he was inducted, and that's because he got a big start. And he didn't breed a lot of mares until later in his life. He only bred, a lot of times he only bred 4 or 5 mares, and then sometimes at Kruger's they bred 10 mares to him, maybe with outside mares. And a few times after my brother and I bought him back, we had a few big crops out of him. A lot of people wanted to breed to him. He was basically a living legend already when he was a teenager. So here he is. Jeremy Stevens snapped this picture in 2006. He came with Lynn to a sale that my dad and I had in Wilmer, Minnesota, a POA sale we put on by ourselves. And he was, 20 years old in this picture, I believe. And, he kept his eyes pretty good. He did have moon blindness. They say all homozygous horses have something like that. And he did later in his life for sure. Like when I brought him down to Oklahoma with me, if I'd be working late and went and fed him outside, if I threw him some hay, he'd have to kind of smell around and he'd walk around with his head down to get it. But his eyes never got misshapen or anything like that. And it was kind of funny because his eyes didn't quite look like some of his foals, but I can always tell a Kiddo Tough relative. A lot of times I can. Sometimes they're diluted out. But the eyes, if you notice one that we called it rolling them down. If they roll their eyes down, there's a lot of white on the top of their eyes. That's a Kiddo Tough trait. A lot of his babies had that, and a lot of his sons threw that as well. So here's the picture of him at 20 years old. I think I put the other day I was 33 and he was 20. It was muddy. That was in Mother's Day weekend, like May 8th or something, when we were having that sale, and I was really busy. So he was in a little muddy pen for a while. We lived on a hill, so the mud would kind of go down. But you see that neck. He had that heavy neck, but he also had that big jaw and a nice head and just balance. He'd bred a lot of mares already that year. We probably had close to 8 babies on the ground already by then, and we were rebreeding mares. So that's the Kiddo pictures there, and I'm going to put it just on the screen here so you don't see me gawking. So I haven't been looking at the comments. I see Tracy, night blindness, not moon blindness. Yeah, night blindness. I knew Tracy would know the technical. When you talk to different people over the years, they call it different things, but I'm sure that's the technical name for it. So I took that headshot. Okay, so the one by the red barn, Jackie took that. I thought it was. So that's that one right there. Jackie took that picture. So, and Caswell's had somebody take the one where he's turned, and then I took this picture, and it was enhanced a little bit to tuck the halter, up like that. And he was probably 14 or 15. Well, he was older than that because that picture wasn't when he went into the Hall of Fame. They didn't have a picture in there, so I added one to it years later. So, okay, let's get to the next group of pictures here, which will be the second group of pictures. So we're scrolling. Hope you're not getting dizzy. Second photo dump. Here we go. So this is Kiddo's mother. A lot of people never seen her in person. Again, she didn't have those glowy eyes or glass eyes or whatever you want to call it. I know Tracy will correct me if I say it wrong. But that was just the camera hitting. You got to remember these were not really. Some of these were Polaroids and some of them were just those twisty cameras. It wasn't a big Canon or Nikon camera. So, and there's Kiddo down there. Body shot of him, a little shot. You can't see much, but we body clipped that mare because she was always fuzzy, and that's her after she was body clipped. Boy, a lot of people wanted her after that, but she just wasn't a good mother. She was a good producer as far as she had a couple good foals, but she was hard to get in foal. And then Kiddo was almost like an orphan. we sold her the next year because he'd come up by himself. He was so friendly and had such a great disposition. She would either come with herself or he'd come before. Or they were never together. Once he was about a month or two old when they were in the pasture. We had about 10 acres there, and they would come from all the way in the back. And then we leased about 7 or 8. So if they had a long way to come to feed, we fed them, put them in stalls every night like this, even in the summer, and then we'd let them back out a lot of times. And he'd just be on his own. But he always seemed to like people more than he liked his own mother, and that's one of the reasons we got rid of her. Plus, she was empty again in 87. She was in 85, 84, 85. She missed, had kiddo in 86, and then was empty in 87, and we put her in a spring sale. Then Dad said that was enough. Plus, we knew we were going to keep her son for a stallion. Like I say, we would have kept him his whole life, and we did buy him back later as a teenager, but things happen in life. So that's kind of a fuzzy picture of her there. She kind of blends in with the hay, but I just wanted to show her big. That was East Acres Copper Blaze was her name. And these are rare photos of her sire, East Acres Copper Kid. Now, he would be a half brother to Cricket McHugh, the famous POA mare that was hardship. She was an app mare. Mr. Little Buck is a quarter horse that bred a POA mare to get this guy. And, of course, Max Nebergall had him. That's a East Acres Copper Kid. That's Max there. I included some pictures of Max too because East Acres is the sire and the dam of Kiddo Tough. So even though Rorks are the breeders of him, if it wasn't for his stuff and some people like Ray Peets and stuff, Kiddo wouldn't have happened. So there's another shot. You can kind of see Kiddo's head a little bit in his maternal grandsire. Definitely that kind of that scopy head and just a different color. Of course, Kiddo threw reds, and his dad was a leopard. Back then they called him tricolored leopard. He had about 5 different color spots on him. He had an orange colored spot, a yellow spot, but you would have called him a bay leopard, I guess, if you had to pick a color. But a lot of the old timers called him a tricolored because he had a bunch of black spots on him too. So this is Diamond 2. This is actually the quarter horse sire of Mr. Little Buck. So if anybody has a picture of Mr. Little Buck, that would be Cricket McHugh's dad, and also the horse I just showed, East Acres Copper Kid's dad. And this is their grandpa, Diamond 2, a registered quarter horse. He's an older horse in this picture already. A lot of body there. So here's Kiddo's sire, East Acres Chippewa, who kind of made a name for himself as a sire too. He had the Tough Dots, and he had some others, Tough Tacos and Chips Lady, that had helped the Gibsons Foundation on their breeding program. And he had that neck too. So, it kind of comes naturally. Kiddo actually got more of a pony neck than him years later, but they had long necks. But Chip didn't have the head, Kiddo did. The mother provided the head, but this guy had a hip. This was in 1985. This would have been about in October, so he wasn't breeding any mares. He was fat, hog fat. He was way ahead of his time as far as body goes. And this was in 87, 2 years later, after this was about July 4th weekend, so he'd been breeding mares. We'd stopped pasture breeding him by then in the years we were hand breeding him. But his head looks a little better in that angle. But those big old spots, and you can see some of the different colors of the spots there. And then this is when we were getting ready to sell him. Dad cleaned him up for the new owners because we knew we were going to go with Kiddo. So I always thought he reminded me of a Napstrid bred horse in this, but of course he was a registered POA. But he had double tough in him, and of course Sire through Landon Series Super Spot, and then he had a lot of quarter horse in him too with Leo and Showdown, and I'll show you some of that in a minute. But this is a little closer up picture here. I always loved his hip. He had one of the nicest, smoothest round hips. Now you got to remember, he was born in 1977. These pictures were taken in 88 or 89, so he already had some age on him there. But he carried a lot of body for a horse that was only 54 inches, a pony. So here's his sire. This is East Acres Tough to Beat. This is him as a yearling out in Colorado at the 75 International Show. He had a little different eye than Kiddo. He had more of that side eye, I call it. Of course, he ended up in California and then in Minnesota, close to us, so we could breed to him, which we did several times. And we just so happened to get a son in one of his first sons. But he was always a beautiful horse. I thought he lived to be a ripe old age too. He lived in his 30s. His color reminded me of Rough and Tough a little bit, and I got a lot of pictures of him here. He went out to the Mitchells Good Time POAs out in California, and she had that big heart on her for the bottom, like the concho down there. Then there's his headshot. So the owners of him always in Minnesota always wondered where Chip come from, because this horse was beautiful red and Chip was that more bay leopard, and then the heads were two different type heads. So, and then here he is when they showed him, Mitchell showed him at the California International. I believe he won most colorful out there in stallions. I might be wrong, and it might have been all colors then, but he didn't win his class. It was really tough back then. Like age stallions, he would have been 3, but the age stallions, there was 19 of them at that show, so that's a lot of stallions. But, and then this is him after Markers bought him in Minnesota, Markadot Pony Farm up in Sauk Center, Minnesota. Their kids showed him a little bit. And here's Tough to Beat as again at the International. He would have been 2 here with Double Tough. That's Julian Nemers holding Double Tough, and then Max in the middle. And then I'm sorry, I'm going to blank on his name, but it's the Mitchell kid from California. Hopefully him and her sister watch this and can write down his name. I apologize. But anyway, this was a good professional picture taken at the Illinois International Show. 18th annual. I'm trying to bring that back. This year's the 66th, even though they changed the name, and I copied that for years up till like it was in its 40s. They would do that. So, and then here's a picture of Double Tough. Of course, Alan Potter, professional photo. Double Tough changed the breed, as we all know. My family was big fans of Double Tough, and I always thought if we could own something like Double Tough, well, I didn't know it'd be this little few spot colt that we had. You know, he ended up siring a lot more than Double Tough, and he had just like Double Tough did. He had great daughters and sons. East Acres Double Tough sons really made a name for themselves, and that's what Kiddo's sons have done. So Kiddo wasn't as flashy as this guy, and he didn't have that neck, of course, but he had a little more hip actually than this horse in the back end. But if you can have Double Tough back there, a lot of breeders like that. So here's the grandpa on the other side. This would be, so Double Tough was Chippa Tough's grandpa, and then this was his other grandpa. This is Lannon Series Super Spot, and he was loud colored. You still can see some of this breeding today in the color. So I always thought that was a curious mix, the two. So different types. This guy was small. He was under 50 inches. And, of course, Double Tough was a horse that lost his way, a horse-pony cross, Appaloosa to a husky pony mare, big pony mare. And so you had that modern pony look, and then with the older pony, the Lannons. And I thought it just combined to create some good stuff. So going back even further here, how East Acres Tough to Beat got his name was from Hard to Beat, a famous up north for sure, up in the Dakotas and stuff. He was an Appaloosa racehorse, and a daughter of his was bred to Double Tough to get East Acres Tough to Beat. So, and there's kind of a good picture of him. It's fuzzy, but I'll move on. But that showed his body, and like I say, he made a name for himself in the upper Midwest. Hard to Beat. And then this is Showdown Rick. So Chippa Tough's grandmother was a horse that I've talked about a lot, a quarter horse mare named Chippo Leo, and that's where all the O's come from, and Chippo Tough, and then Kiddo Tough, and Kiddo Bounce. They all came from the Chippo Leo mare, and Chippo Leo was actually by Showdown Rick, who's shown here, and then Showdown Rick was by the King Ranch stallion Showdown. He was foaled out on the King Ranch. They sold him. He went on to make a name for himself. And then, of course, Showdown was by the first registered quarter horse ever, Wimpy. So then the Leo kicks in Chippa Tough, and on Chippo Leo on the bottom side, Leo DeMay and some of that. So I was going to put that in here, but I figured I got enough history. So, all right, let's go back to this. Yep, Chippo Leo's still in. Tracy had not quite a full sister to Chippa Tough, but it was I don't more than a half sister, because she had East Acres Miss Muffet was by Double Tough, and then out of Chippa Tough's mother. So she still got that in her program today. So as I'm looking for these pictures here, the thing about Kiddo and his get too that I think really made people want him was the dispositions. the dispositions were so great. Kiddo, I mean, he used to be just like a ham or a clown. You could just put a rope around him, or you just grab a tuft of mane to lead him out to water, and then just tell him get back in his stall. He was almost like a milk cow. He'd just go back in his stall, and it's so easy to work with. And his foals were that way too, of course. So, and I think that's why trainers really went, especially when the breed became more of a trainer-centric breeding club in the 90s and the 2000s. A lot of the trainers and the stable owners were looking for stuff related to Kiddo because it was easy to deal with. So, of course, this picture is very close to me. Hopefully this is showing up there. Yep, this is the Crisco Kid as a baby, and then that would be an uncle to him. That's actually a East Acres Chippewa Oz's Sweet Speculation colt that didn't go on to become famous. He went out of POAs and was gilded, but he was actually a few spot. Of course, Crisco's not. The picture just, you can see the spots on his head. He's got spots all over him. He's just in this washed out photo. Then, of course, that's my mom. She was just a little bit younger than I am now in this picture, so that was cool. Then that mare in the background's actually not ours. That was a mare in for breeding to Chippewa. That was Kelly Blackburn of Carl Oz's from Granite Falls. But so this is Crisco. We sold Crisco to a grandson of Gordy Caswell, our friend, and then Gordy just basically took him and realized he was gonna be something, so he bought him from his grandson or whatever, and thankfully he did, because he would have just become a backyard pony otherwise. He took him to the sale as a yearling, and he was sold to Tracy Porter from Oklahoma, who was making a big name for herself in POAs at the time. Porter POA ponies, PPPs. Of course, he was gilded already as a yearling. She showed him as a gilding. She won with him in the pretty new, still new JPFC classes. And then her son, Cody, won a lot with him. A ton of stuff. As you see there, that's at the World Show that was in Tulsa, so that was in their backyard. Crisco would have been 5 in this picture. Got a saddle, and what do you have, about 8 trophies, 9 trophies, and all those belt buckles. So I've tried to get one of these belt buckles because I'm friends with Tracy on Facebook, but she hasn't coughed up one of those belt buckles. I said, who needs 9 belt buckles? But, you know, I know you move and stuff, and sometimes things get lost. So the Crisco Kid, if you don't know who he is, of course, he's still alive. He's in Michigan with the Wagner family, and he's 35 years old because he was born in 89. And again, him and Rough and Tough were born a few weeks apart. And then there was another Doc's Double Chip was born that year. Doc bred a Chippewa daughter, line bred to Kiddo. He was going to breed a whole bunch of mares to him, but he changed his mind like Doc would sometimes, and just only bred 2. And then years later, he kept breeding back to him. And then he'd breed to his sons and grandsons as well. So what really made Crisco famous is, you know, he had a lot of great riders. Of course, this is Maggie LaGrasso. After the Porters were kind of getting out of POAs, they sold him to the LaGrassos from Decatur, Illinois. And he'd already won a ton with the Porters, and then Maggie just kept winning with him. I mean, a number of classes every year, a handful of classes at least every year. And they started adding up. You know, those classes just kept adding up and up. Here's one of my favorite pictures. This is her graduation picture, I believe. Maggie barefooted on Crisco, bareback, just with the show halter. You know, and he held his own in halter. He won the 2-year-old geldings, and he was junior gelding as a 2-year-old. And then that was with Porters. And then I think he didn't, even as an old man showing, you know, in his teens, sometimes a judge would slip him up there in the top 3 or so, but then he wouldn't get placed. So rightfully so. I mean, he was getting older and more out of shape like geldings do. But he ended up winning 60 classes according to my records, and that's not counting certain specialty classes and stuff. He won the versatility twice. Of course, he won it with Maggie, and then he won it with the girl in this picture here, Sammy Gallagher. So 2-time versatility winner, and I believe that's how it went. I know he won it twice. But another thing people don't realize is the Crisco Kid was second, which now they say reserve, but back in the day we just said second, 33 times. He placed second at the national show 33 times. So if he would have hit a few more of those, he almost made 100 on his own. But he did win 60. So that's more than anybody according to my records. So Tudor Bars has 59 and Shoto has 54. So here he is with his current owner, and I believe that is Madison sitting on the saddle there with the Indian or the Native American baby. I'm sorry, Native American regalia costume there. He won a lot of classes and a little bit of everything. I mean, there for a while. Now we have 45 and over and stuff, and he's just too old to come back in that. But before that, he was the first one to win in 8 and under, 9 through 12, 13 through 18, and then 19 and over as far as JPFC. I don't think he was ever showed in the new 19 and over classes. And then, of course, this was a 6 and under class, a lead line costume. So he has a lot of credit, and he helped Kiddo a lot. A lot of people wanted a Crisco kid. And, he had a lot of great families that helped him out and a lot of great riders. And another thing that's kind of ironic is that several times we got phone calls saying, well, one time we got a phone call, Crisco died, and I'm not talking lately, like he's 30 some years old now. I'm talking when he was in the prime of his life. We got 2 of those phone calls over the years that he died at a show, and once he road foundered and would never be shown again. And he probably had 20 or 30 national class wins when he road foundered. They said, of course he didn't. He did get sick at a few shows. He was at a lot of national shows, and he worked hard in the show pen. So one of my favorite memories was in 2003. Maggie, I think that was her last year with him. I know it was. And I went to Tennessee, down to Shelbyville. And I was sitting there watching the reining, and this is years before I became a judge. I had judged some, but I was trying to judge it a little bit, but I couldn't quite judge it as good as I could now. But there was 40 in the class, 13 through 18. That's before it became 14 to 18. And I'm sitting there going, I hope I'm not barn blind, but I'm thinking I watched all 40 of these go, and Crisco looked really good like he always did, and then Peekaboo Street, one that I raised that was colored a lot like him, but she had a big splotch on her side and a cluster of spots. I said, they look, Deanna McBride was riding him from California. I said, those two look like the winners to me. And they announced the winners out of 40, and Crisco was first and Peekaboo was second. And I was sitting there all alone. My dad wasn't there at the show, or my niece or my brother, anybody. I was just there. Some friends later, was sitting there in between and stuff. But I just took that in. And it was such a cool moment that we bred at 2 different places. One was bred in Kimball, and then one was bred at our new place in Dassel, and both by Kiddo. And they were like 10 years apart, so 9 or 10 years apart. So that was always a cool memory. So, of course, the second foal, like I say, I wish this was in color, but we have several colored pictures of him. Is Doc's Rough and Tough, and Dean bought him at the sale as a baby from Doc Nemers. Didn't have to pay a fortune for him. He hadn't been shown or anything. And he was a little guy. His mother, he was littler than he should have been, because Kiddo was 54 inches and his mother was about 53 or 4. And she was what they call a brick, a brick house. She was stacked. And she had a beautiful head. And her neck was her worst feature, because I was always nervous. Kiddo had the thick neck, but he threw long necks. And then even Doc admitted she was a little short in the neck. And her first foal was Doc's Rough and Tough. And she passed away fairly young, but she had a lot of beautiful red and white babies for Doc by different stallions. And, of course, Rough and Tough was her first one. And, a lot of people don't know this, but Dean never brought him back to the international show as an aged small stallion. He ended up being a small stallion, and he won the world as a small stallion in Waterloo. I believe it was. He was 4 then, but he wasn't shown at the national show as much back then, and they were breeding with him. So he won as a yearling and a 2-year-old, his class, and then was junior both years and was grand both years. But I always thought he could have won. Some years there might have been 1 or none in the small stallion classes. So he could have piled on the wins if he would have went. But and of course, he's become a legendary sire. He's in the Hall of Fame, and they need to work on getting his premier sire. I think he's eligible for it. But I always like this picture, even though it's in black and white. It just shows how stout. That looks like about a 14-hand horse, doesn't it? And he's actually a 50-inch, 51 and under stallion. So, And then there's a picture that shows his side view. So again, we always thought the color reminded us of Tough to Beat, skipping back 3 generations there. It was a little different, the blanket, but it was way closer than the leopard in the few spot sire. So here he is as an older guy, and if Dean's watching, he is watching, he could say how old he was in this picture, but I know he was older already in this picture, and I believe he lived to be in his 30s. He just passed away a few years ago. And here he is with Dean, his longtime owner. Dean had him since he was a baby at the sale, and of course he passed away as an old man on the Dammons farm. So he kept that color. And there's Dean with his 2 prized older stallions, both related to Kiddo. Of course, Rough and Tough on the right, and then the Silver Kid on the left, which is a Kiddo grandson, and he was by Hive Avatar. So we're not going to talk about the Silver Kid as much tonight because we did dedicated a whole episode to him actually before Kiddo. So you can go through the archives and check that. Thanks, Dean. 31 years old. So, yep, he lived to be 31. And, of course, stallions a lot of times don't live to be as long when they're breeding. The Kiddo passed away at 24. I maybe could have kept him going longer, but he hadn't been breeding since 21, and he had some health issues that was hurting him. He was in pain, and the vet recommended it as well. So I put Kiddo to sleep when he was 24. I held him in my arms, and he actually laid down, and he knew it was coming, I believe, and he just peacefully went. So, and I think Rough and Tough did the same thing. So it's cool that his first 2 foals, Kiddo's first 2 foals, became so famous, and they both lived to be in their 30s. 31 for Rough and Tough, and what's his name? Crisco. The Crisco kid is still going at 35. So here's Two-Eyed Sunny. Now, Rough and Tough had a lot of foals. He's had a lot of foals, and a lot of them became sires. Two-Eyed Sunny's one of them. And here's another one. This is Doc's Rough and Zip. Of course, he's built a Hall of Fame career, I think, for himself, too. What Janelle and Pat Burton's done with his babies, and a lot of other people. Doc bred back to him. That's always a sign of a great breeder. Doc bred for Rough and Tough and then sold him as a baby, and then utilized him, bred to him over the years from Dean's place, and that's where this horse came from. And then he also went back and bred to this horse, so quite a bit actually. So Rough and Zip, of course, that's Chuck Shackleton there in Iowa with him. A great sire. Again, another little guy. So this is the full sister to the Crisco Kid. This would have been Doc's Double Sweets 1990 foal. So Crisco was her first kiddo, of course, in 89. This was her second. And she had a long neck and a long back, but she had that long croup too, and a smooth way about her. And of course, she became a very good mother. She's the mother to the Silver Kid. She also produced quite a few other champions, including He's Intensified. This is him there winning at the Midwest Regional, and he became a great show gelding. He's by Skip Intense, and probably one of his standouts for sure. So, and she had a lot of other foals too, and I know Tracy's got a relative to him, Doc's Big Time Sweetie or something like that. So it keeps going on and on. So there's the Silver Kid. He is in the Hall of Fame. Again, like I say, we're not going to talk about a lot of his foals, but please go back and check what he's done. He is your leading sire of national champions. So there's that picture again. So, all right. So we're moving right along here. And, of course, I could do a whole show on Rough and Tough. And we did one on the Silver Kid. And some of the other sons, CR Star Kid, there's some pictures coming up of him. And then, of course, Kiddo Bounce, we're going to touch on him towards the end because his stuff is still very active to this day, and he could have a lot of winners yet. But, on all breed, I think I looked up one time in the stud books that Kiddo Tough had, I think, around 130 some registered babies, which is a lot for POAs. I wish I had access to the database so I could go and look up, compare like Chief Little Britches and Tough Plotted and Paper Tiger and Kiddo and see. Because all breed doesn't, they sometimes they'll put the same horse in there 3 times with the name spelled different. And then sometimes they'll just completely spell it. And the ones that weren't registered will be in there. And of course, a lot of them are not mare. A lot of the Great Pals by Santee Cody were out of her. The high selling mare at the international sale was out of that mare. She's not on here for some reason. And then there's some that I know, like I say, wasn't even registered. But I looked through here and I highlighted, like CR Star Kid, and then he had 2 full siblings, CR Stars Expression and CR Tough Star. They both became champions. Of course, there's Rough and Tough. Then you have Jag. We'll be looking at a picture of him. Some JBJs like JBJ's Kiddo My Dreams and JBJ's Step Aside Boys. They won the same year at the International Show in '95. KBC Kid Done It. That was Kruger Bear Creek when they owned him for quite a while. So KBC Kid Done It did well, was a national champion. So was KBC Nifty Kid. A lot of Raining Blood on the other side, and they were really cool reiners. And then Kiddo Carr was bred by Susan House, Susan Sands, Chris, or it's not Susan, Chris, I'm sorry, Susan's sister, Susan Hammer, and then her sister was Chris House, and she became Chris Sands. She's the one that bred for Kiddo Carr, and she named him that because she took a Santee mare, a Showmount daughter, and bred it to Kiddo, and told me she was going to name it that. So, and then there's 2 full pages on all breed if you go and look. Leo Bounce was one of his early winners. She won as a baby. My T Charlie Angel was from the Trouts. They bred to Kiddo quite a few times. Of course, the CRs came from Minnesota and Wisconsin. Koss, so Larry Koss and the Cannon River Ranches, they bred to Kiddo quite a few times. Peekaboo Street, as I'd mentioned, Sonny's First Class Kid was one of the last ones my brother raised. The Caribbean Kid, I don't think I have a picture of him, but Kathy McKenzie bred her famous show mare Socks, her kid's famous show mare to Kiddo. I was so nervous. We shipped semen. She didn't settle the first time. She was already not a real older mare, but they were showing her heavy still, and I was so nervous that she wouldn't settle or that she would have a baby that wasn't that good. And she did settle the second shipment, and out came the Caribbean Kid, who's, of course, still going strong. And then you got the Crimson Kid, the Crisco Kid, the Diamond Bucks Kid, Touch of Velvet. We'll be talking about her. So that's a lot of the kiddos. But then Rough and Tough, I won't go through all his, but he has a page and about a half. And CR Star Kid has a full page, and now Kiddo Bounce has a page and about a quarter. So that's a good line there of stuff. We're not done at all with the show tonight. We're going to look at some more pictures, of course. You know how this show goes. So hopefully you like all the pictures. I haven't been having time to look at all the comments. Someday, Kent, when we're retired, we'll research this in the office. Yep, I would like to have access to some of the files because I think it'd be cool to just know. I think people would eat it up if they could know how many foals. I know you can research it, but it's tougher to do. Like you say, when we're retired and we're there, we can do it. So, all right, don't get dizzy. I'm going to scroll through some pictures here. That's the Kiddo Bounce segment coming up. There's Becky and Kiddo Carr I'd mentioned. That's the one that Chris Sand bred. And there's our sponsor tonight. She said she didn't need a lot of Facebook time, but she's becoming a friend of mine. I've never met the lady. This is Albie Horn. She seems like a great person. She's in North Carolina. Not a lot of POAs there. Hopefully we can get that changed and get some POA shows going and stuff. But she got a good one from Tracy. I'm going to show some of the pictures here. That's a great shot there. She sent me about 8 pictures, and I picked my 5 favorites. Of course, Tracy always puts those big hips and that loud color on her stuff. Of course, TC Impulsive Weedo is the sire, and this filly's named TC Bling It On Weedo. And I like this picture here. That she looks like she's going to be able to do a lot of things, and halter's one of them. So she's got that long neck and nice popping forearm there, and that I love that hip. So and color to boot. So thank you, Albie, again for being a sponsor for tonight. And if you want to be a sponsor, we do have the next quite a few episodes sponsored, but there's always more episodes to do, especially if I keep going every Saturday night. So, or every Tuesday night, I mean. Saturday's the one I used to do here for Jackson's. We do have next week, Campbell Cornelius is going to be our guest. She's the High Point pony. She has the High Point pony in the nation, and that's a tradition. That'll be the third year in a row that we've done the High Point. And we'll also talk, of course, it's Black Hand and beyond, so we'll talk about some past High Point winners, throw it way back to the 70s and the 80s, and throw in a few others there. And we're going to have a great conversation with that young lady, and I look forward to that, and we'll have a sponsor for that one. And then I got to come up with a couple more episodes, and then I think it's April 16th is going to be a very special episode with Kevin Jewell. Of course, Kevin is a POA alumnus. He grew up in POAs and went on to have a great career. He still is having a great professional horse career. So please don't go anywhere. We still got some show going left. Let's see, it's 7:30 almost, so we've been almost an hour on here. I got to find my next photo dump, which is coming up. So that's why I'm looking at the screen here. I think it's probably this one here. We can just say it is anyway. So, all right. Here we go. While you look at this filly and try to figure out who this is, I'll take a drink of water. Well worth the money. Well, thank you. Thank you. So, of course, this is Touch of Velvet. And talk about two famous POAs crossing here. Two Hall of Famers, and they're side by side in the Hall of Fame. I do have a picture of that somewhere coming up. Every time I'm out there, I take a picture of it in Indianapolis. They're right next to each other, and I'm talking about Black Swan S. That's the mother to this filly, and then Kiddo, who the show's about tonight. That's the parents to Touch of Velvet. And this is her, of course. Danielle Kruger had a great show career on many POAs, but her and Black Swan became like a forever team. They were known all across the country for being the ones to beat. You know, even people outside of POA knew about Black Swan S and Danielle Kruger from Southeast Minnesota, from Iota, Minnesota. So she won the 2-year-old mares. Of course, Black Swan was a grand mare. Kiddo took a little bit of the halter off of Black Swan there, so I'd say he wrecked it a little bit, but not really. You know, she just got a little bit of that thickerness maybe, but there she is under saddle, so that was a good cross for sure. And she became a famous mare. She also became the mother to Touch of Letters, so who a lot of people may know him. He's by a quarter horse stallion, and then Touch of Velvet. So if you didn't know, Black Swan S's barn name was Velvet. That's what Danielle called her, and that's why she named her first baby Touch of Velvet. So Kiddo had the great opportunity. He bred a lot of good brood mares over the years, like Doc's Double Sweet. We were lucky enough to get her away from Doc, and a lot of other good mares. But like I'd mentioned, HMH Super Sox, she had one foal and one foal only, and it was by Kiddo Tough. Black Swan's first, well, it wasn't her first foal. I think she had a couple foals before. She had Batman and she had the Fireman. So I apologize, it wasn't her first foal, but it kind of went to the next level when they bred her to Kiddo, especially this one. She had some full brothers and sisters, but especially brothers. But this one was the one that was really special. It just really nicked, as you can tell there. But Kiddo bred some other great mares too, and he bred a lot of solid mares. Usually when he bred a mare that had color, Appaloosa POA color, like Black Swan S, you know, you'd get a smaller blanket like this. And when you would breed a solid, a lot of times he would produce a leopard. So he didn't have as many few spots as they're producing today because he was bred to a lot of solid mares. So this is a full sister, I believe, to the Crisco Kid and to Kid's Double Sweet, who is the mother to the Silver Kid. I showed you a picture earlier with Corey holding her. Of course, this is Jackie, and this is JBJ's Sweet Dreams. So Jackie ended up with Doc's Double Sweet. All the good breeders wanted her, you know, Doc's Double Sweet. We were lucky enough to have her for a while. So here's some good breeders in this picture. John and Bunny Kennedy, they bought a lot of weanlings to build up their foundation, and one of them was JBJ's Cagey Lady. Her mother was another one of those good mares I'm talking about, which was Latch's Shady Lady. If you ever seen her, she was a tremendous looking mare. She was a great brood mare for Jackie, especially through the late 80s and early 90s. This would be a full brother to KG Lady. KG Lady did well in the futurity. This guy won the international show in 1995. I had the honor and privilege to show him for Jackie. Nikki and Jackie got him ready, but I let him in to the ring. He was just a cool colt. And he had a full brother the year earlier that won the world in Tulsa. I think he was like Cowboy Cadillac or something like that was his name. And there he is in Gordyville winning. That's me pre-facial hair there. I'm still just a kid. So let's see, I would have been 20-something. Yeah, young 20s. So nice Jeff Kirkbride picture there, surviving the test of time. So then that was the year that this is JBJ's Step Aside, boys. She's out of a Doc Stuff Dude daughter, and that was a really nice mare the Blazers had and Jackie had. And this, of course, is Larry Gibson. He showed the filly. I wasn't lucky enough to show them both. She had Larry lead in the filly. But then I did condition this filly for the futurity, and she placed real well. She'd got hurt in the Iowa futurity, had an accident, and then she hurt a leg, so she was swelled up a little bit for the national futurity, international, but she still placed third or fourth in the futurity. So that year, they both won, and there she is at the futurity there. That's Jackie holding her, of course. But Kiddo was only the third sire to have both weanlings win at the international show. So Black Hand did it way back when, like at the first or second show. And then, who was it? Ladies Warrior did it. One was a GRs and one was a 7Ms, like in 67. And then Kiddo did it in 95. So just another random tidbit. And these two did good in mare and foal here. This is Jackie, of course. This is again Gordyville. So I think Designed by Dude was her name, that mare. She was a good mare, great mare. They won the mare and foal class. And she did well in the brood mares too. JBJ's Designed by Dude. And she's in some pedigrees of stuff you'll see for sure. So this is Kiddo's My Daddy. And sorry about the fuzzy pictures. There's a clearer picture. And I'm really young here. I'm about 20, 21. I'm probably haven't even drank yet in this picture. So, but I always liked this filly. She had a lot of quarter horse. Her mother was a quarter horse. Mr. XL Mack and Bo's My Daddy breeding was her mother. And she's a full sister. She was the first one of the cross, and it was the mare's first foal, the quarter mare. And she ended up having a lot of POA foals. She had Mr. X and the Boston Kid and Jag, and then she had a couple others after that. But those were all the ones I got a hold of. Most of them were bred by the Haleys from Minnesota, Hector, Minnesota. I did lease the mare and Jag. I'm the breeder of Jag. But, of course, this filly, Kiddo's My Daddy, grew up to be one of the foundations for Amber Hansen in Wisconsin. So the AKAs, a lot of them are related to this filly. She had few spots for, I believe, and this is one of her sons, I think, too, by Skip Intense. So again, Skip Intense and Kiddo crossing there, AKA with intent to win. She still has stuff related to him. So this, my dad's birthday was 2 days ago, and this filly she never made a mark in POAs. I know John Anderson got to see her. We hauled her out to Winchester, and he talks about it. We pulled her off the trailer, and he couldn't believe how stout she was. And then she had like an Arabian head and neck, 4 white socks, and she just had that big old front end on her. And she just developed some issues and never became famous, but she couldn't have babies or anything. But this is my dad. Like I say, he would have been 85 on Sunday on St. Patrick's Day, first birthday without him. So I threw in a couple pictures of Dad here. And that's that same filly there. I wish I could have showed her in the small mares. She was a tremendous looking filly. She was actually bred by Doc Nemers, but foaled out. She was the first foal on our Dassel place to be foaled out, but I'd gotten Doc's Double D from Doc in foal to Kiddo, and that was the result. This is the Candy Ojai kid. She just recently passed away. She was with Crystal in Kentucky or nearby Kentucky. I know, Crystal grew up in POAs, and this was a young yearling filly in this picture. You can see the grass, the dandelions are just blooming. So it was almost this time of year, maybe a little later in Minnesota. It wasn't probably May yet, but she grew up to have a tremendous body. Some of the kiddos would have these straight legs like that. That's what he did. He had those real stick legs, straight legs, but they performed nice. And this was her filly that Jackie lost. I think Dreams or something like that was her name. A great mare, and too bad she went way too early. And she actually went before her mom did. Her mom just died lately, and she was born in 2004. The Candy Ojai kid got her name because we were having a sale. The first POA sale my dad and I put on was at the Candy Ojai Fairgrounds. This man came up to it. He came with one of Sire Star Kid's early babies and sold it. He'd bred a full sister to him and got a solid colt, and he brought it up because it was like a production sale. And we were trying to get POAs out to other avenues, like to 4-H clubs and hunter jumpers and people like that, pony clubs. So of course this is Larry Myers, late Larry Myers. We miss him a lot. And his stallion CR Star Kid, he was bred, like I say, from Cannon River ranches, and they bred quite a few mares to kiddo, and he had a few full sisters that won a lot too, and he won the small stallions, and then he went on to be a select sire champion sire, and of course the international champion sire as well. So, and he's in the Hall of Fame as well. The CR Star Kid is. So this is Janelle back in the day, 2006. Of course, she's Janelle Burton now. This is On the Rocks. I remember I didn't recognize Janelle. I knew her a little bit as a kid. We were in different groups, of course, a little different age, but fairly close. And I remember asking Larry, who is that's showing out there? Because I knew he was watching it. It was a Star Kid, and he told me all about it. So this was when Janelle started breeding POAs. I believe this was one of her early ones, On the Rocks. So this was a Star Kid out of that great quarter mare that's produced a lot of good mares for her over the years. And I could have a whole show, of course, on Petra and all the stuff she has related to CR Star Kid and to old Doc's Rough and Zip. So this was the Tabasco Kid. Again, he didn't get that famous, but he was beautiful. Kiddo would do this once in a while. This was, and that's a piece of grass or straw in her mouth, the mare's mouth, not wire. It looks like it's wire, but it's not. So this mare came from Marlene Bourgeon. My brother seen her. We used to hang out behind the brick wall there, behind the block at the auction in Iowa, and he come and got me, or I was walking by, and he goes, "What do you think of this filly?" And I said, I like her, and she wasn't the best headed, but she was a Rude Dude, and of course Rude Dude was a touch of Tentina. She was just bred really well, and he bought her, and then we ended up breeding her to kiddo, and that was Toby, we called him. Well, she was 54, 55 when she grew up, that mare, and he ended up being about 48 inches. So kiddo would do that every once in a while, especially later in his life. I know the scientists and geneticists will say that's not possible, but it seemed like he started producing a little smaller as he got older. This was another one that didn't get real big, but this is the Diamond Bucks Kid. And the story always was, Ashley always laughed. She said, you need to come up with better names. But Megabucks, Driftwood's Megabucks, who was related to stuff we'd had. I showed a picture of his dad earlier, double shot in that one baby picture. But when she was born out in the pasture, about 5 feet from her was a dime laying in the grass, just a little diamond. She already had money in her name, Bucks, so we named her the Diamond Bucks Kid. And of course, she grew up to be a gamer, and she's in Edmond, Oklahoma. I apologize if Ashley's watching or somebody from Edmond. You can say the name of this girl. I'm sorry. I've been up since like 7 o'clock and doing training people and doing car deals all day, but this is her again. And she won quite a few. She's one of our last winners by Kiddo Tough for us. So I think this gelding, they called him Romeo, his barn name. He's in Edmond too, if he's still alive. He was born in 05. This would have been a full brother to Peekaboo Street. I named him the Get Her Done with an R, like for work, the Get Her Done Kid. And I know he was a pretty nice gelding. He didn't show at a lot of national events, but he showed around Oklahoma. This was the Crimson Kid's full sister and the Showdown Kid's full sister. She was in between them, the Showdown. So the mare on the right over there looks bay, but she's not a bay. That was a POA mare. Had some Victor breeding and some Sheldack Ranch breeding. She was the mother to the colt I just showed, plus Peekaboo Street. This is the year Peekaboo was born. And then the bigger mare there, which she wasn't that big. She was about 14-1. Like I say, she became the mother to the Crimson Kid. So this is that filly again. Blazing Jewel, I called her. She ended up with the Murskies in Wisconsin. And I always liked her neck and her head and just her style. But again, she didn't become a famous POA. There's Peekaboo Street, who did become famous. Of course, she had the unlucky task of going up against First Impulse. They were the same age, and she had a great rider, trainer on her, Darren McBride, and Darren Vincent was the trainer. And of course, Darren's daughter, Deanna, ended up winning stuff with her as a youth. But she won a lot of stuff, but when she went head-to-head with that stallion, First Impulse, she was second a lot of times, but she was still a great mare, Peekaboo Street. She was born during the Olympics, and I had a crush on Peekaboo Street, and she fell down in one of her runs, and this filly had a big red spot on the side of her hip, and I said, well, that might be like Peekaboo had that big, might have had a red spot on her hip from falling down. So I never met the woman, Peekaboo Street, but I did find out later she raised Appaloosas, so I thought that was ironic. I read a story about her, so I don't know if she knows there's a pony named after her, a leopard pony, but here's that spot I'm talking about, that cluster of spots. So, and there she is with my dad as a yearling. I never showed her, but I consigned her to the sale, and then she ended up with a good life. Here's Pat Burton, a young Pat Burton with Jag. Jag went on to win in halter and in performance. He was with quite a few families. Crystal Smith bought him from Burton's. Burton's bought him from me as a baby. I didn't know Pat Burton very well at all. He'd written me a letter because he knew I'd done some research and he was interested in my research, and he was running for the board. That's how long ago we go back. That was 1998. So here's the Crimson Kid, who became one of my more famous ones once I was an adult raising. You know, it's hard to beat the Crisco Kid, but we named him kind of after that, and he was that bright red, so the Crimson Kid. That's that mare again. That was one of my favorite mares. She was like a grade app mare. She was through the CP program. Now you wouldn't be able to use her. But of course he became really famous. Our place in Dassel, if you ever was there, was all built on a hill, so he wasn't that out of bounds on the top line. That's just how I had him standing there. So, and of course here he is when he won. He won the McLaren and the Lewis at the same show. And he won a lot of classes as well. So with Chelsea Bain from Arizona, and she's all smiles there. Of course, she was a great performer as well, great exhibitor. Showed at the same time she was showing a Zippo Sensation, I believe, offspring in the paints. So, but Crisco had a short-lived career, but he had a good career when he showed in POAs. So here's his full brother, the Showdown Kid. He was beautifully marked as well. He had a little more chrome, or a little more trash, they call it nowadays, on him. And again, I never showed him, but I consigned him to the sale, and he was the high-selling yearling at the sale that year. He had a lot of body on him too, but I had him heavy. I had him fat. Again, I wasn't showing him. I was just conditioning him for the sale. That would have been probably a month before the sale. So, and then there he is with a couple of the McKinsey girls. I wish I looked like that now, huh? Maybe I'd sell more cars. So here's a picture of the Boston Kid. He was one of my favorites. He colicked. Him and actually a baby Jag, they were full brothers. They colicked from some bad grain that we'd got. And the elevator ended up cleaning their elevator because of it. And because I'd never had colicked a baby before. That was the first time and only time I ever heard of it, with us having horses. But he was 4 years old. He was a yearling in this picture, and he went grand several times, beat in state shows, and beat his full brother, Mr. X, who was a little different type. But I just threw that in there because he's one of those. This is a friend of mine. I got into POA. She wasn't a friend of mine when I got her into POAs. I met her through horse hauling, and then she became my computer person. Joellen up in Minnesota, she bought a really nice looking small quarter mare, black mare, and bred it to kiddo. And this was the result. And a lot of people might not know her, but she spent her life in Florida, a lot of her life. And this is one of her babies. Of course, this is suddenly gifted. I always thought he was such a unique individual. Look at those big forearms and that color. And there he is as an older horse. Of course, he's still around. He isn't that old there, but he's older than the baby picture. So he's a grandson of Kiddo Tough. A lot of people might not realize that. And he reminds me of Chippa in the color. So, okay, this one here, I'm going to take a drink again. But Diana Peaton's in this picture. And this is an own Kiddo Tough daughter. I don't think she was probably Diana Peaton when this picture was taken, but this is a long time ago. This is Tough My Tough. And Tough My Tough was out of a Kate's mare that was a Siri Silver Prince daughter. And, oh, it's Tuffy. Yeah, I knew Lexi, those Arizona people would chime in, so that's good. And she's the grandmother of a famous stallion that's done a lot in POAs. And we'll get to that in a minute, but this is her daughter. It was at the same sale. So Tough My Tough went to Arizona, and she was bred by the Caswells. That's Veronica Caswell there with her son, Larry, and daughter-in-law, Don. And then, of course, that's Gordon Kruger. And this is Heaven O Bounce here. They bred Tough My Tough back to their Appaloosa stallion. Veronica did. It was after Gordy might have did it. It might have been the year. Yeah, it was the year Gordy passed away. And Heaven O Bounce was the result. That's why they named it Heaven O. And, of course, they bred her, Gordon then bred her back to her grandpa, Kiddo Tough. And that's where Kiddo Bounce comes from. And, of course, here's Kiddo Bounce with the Guthries there, Jackie and Larry. And Kiddo Bounce, you know, he reminds me a lot of Kiddo, except he's a lot smaller. You know, he's a way shorter than Kiddo. So he could be bred to a little different mare than Kiddo, because Kiddo was, you know, 54, and Kiddo would have some big ones once in a while, but sometimes we had to worry, like I said, more about the little bitty ones. And I know this guy has some little ones once in a while, and Jackie crosses him to try to get little once in a while for future stuff. So here's, I think, JBJ's kid Valentino. He's a national champion stallion. He's making a name for himself. This is, if I screw up on some of these names, I apologize. Of course, this is Lindsay Zom, and this is JBJ's Kidorable, I believe. And she's the mother of some good stuff. I think she's the mother to JBJ's Getting Into It, if I'm not mistaken, and some others too. And, of course, this is the mare they call Opal. This is Kid Dazzle. I always got a JBJ's Kid Dazzle. I always got to make sure I don't get Kidorable and Kid Dazzle mixed up. Now, this might be a good time to talk about Jackie and some of her marketing, even though she's not in this picture. Of course, Jackie bred to Kiddo before she owned him. Then she owned him in a partnership with Kruger's. And then when she got back into breeding, she went and found Kiddo Bounce, who was bred by the Krugers. And to separate Kiddo Tough from Kiddo Bounce, when she would name the colts, she would name them with two D's, the kids. So, like, some of them have Kidorable or Kidazzle, so there's two D's anyway. But like JBJ's Kid Rock and stuff like that, the kid will have two D's, and that's how you can always separate it. So that was pretty cool. I thought that was very clever of Jackie to do. Of course, that's Tammy there, and I believe Mr. Longacre, I think Keith Longacre. This mare won 3 times. We got all 3 of them there. She just kept getting bigger as time went on. So she's a Kiddo Bounce, of course, out of a great little quarter mare, but she's an own granddaughter of Kiddo Tough. So, okay, so here's a Kiddo son. This is Kiddo Carr again. Of course, this is Becky. They're from, I believe, Georgia. And she did a lot of, she's side saddle in this picture if you don't realize it. I know the dress is hanging out on the other side, but you see both boots there on his left side. And he was a talented PO. I think he's still around, or he might, yeah, I believe he is. So they've had him a long time, Kiddo Carr. And he's a Supreme Champion gelding, own son of Kiddo Tough. Okay, here's, I think I did the pictures of Two-Eyed Sonny again. Of course, Densmore's had him, bought him from the Damons. And here he is as an adult horse. I always thought he should have been a grand champion, but competition was tough back then. He had to go against Campbell's Dreamcatcher, but I always loved, of course, that's my color. I love that color. And he's a rough and tough son. And then, of course, he's the sire to TMD's Two-Eyed Rawhide, and then Rawhide's the sire to Manny, who's RPR's Impulsive Superman, and then all his super colts that he's got, so that Jess Drish up there in Iowa has. So that goes back to this horse, and of course to Rough and Tough, and then to Kiddo Tough. So in here is Charlie's son with him. I believe he's gelded in this picture, the horse. He's older. He's probably close to 20 in this picture. If Charlie's watching or Tiny, they can tell me. But again, he kept his color too. I'm proud of that. Rough and Tough kept his color, and a lot of the Kiddo Toughs kept their color. Some of the leopards, Jess and I was talking about this. She brought it to my attention at the convention. Some of the leopards, their points faded a little bit from the time they were a baby till they got even later as a weanling. Like when you'd clip them and stuff, they never come back as bright. But a lot of the ones, the red and white ones, stayed. And Rough and Tough was the same way with his foals. Okay, so we're done with that one. And, I'm probably missing a lot of stuff, and I'm sure I got a lot more pictures you guys can go over. I want to thank Shingletons for sending me pictures of Doc's I'm Not Tough, and then Guaranteed Tough Love. I'm Not Tough is a Rough and Tough daughter. Of course, they won mare and foal, and Shingletons are known as promoters and great show people. Charlene's still showing strong, and but they also have bred some nice ones, and with mares like Doc's I'm Not Tough, they've raised some good babies out of her. So, and then look and look up things. If you don't know the names, I run out of time. Here we're going to go over a few Kiddo Bounce babies really quick. Kiddo Bounce could have his own episode on here, and maybe he will later in the year, next year. Of course, this is unsupervised, the colt that won the Futurity, and Kiddo Bounce has won the Get a Sire at the Congress 3 times, I believe, and he might have won it last year, except this baby was entered in the wrong one because they thought he was from a different sire, but he's a Kiddo Bounce. Of course, Kiddo Bounce has thrown a lot of leopards. This guy went on to win Grand, and then he won the Futurity, so he's set his mark in history. You can't take nothing away from him. So great looking baby. That's still him as a weanling there. And then he won Grand Champion Gelding at the Fort Worth Stock Show in January, already down in Texas. So, but he's a Kiddo Bounce. And then a lot of these are some of the early Kiddo Bounces from Jackie. We're just going to go through some of these quick. I apologize if I don't name names. But again, you can always go back and look at these. They're on Facebook forever to see. I believe this was Jackie's first one here by Kiddo Bounce. I think she told me that. So that's him right there. And I think it was Kid Rock. So I know there's been a lot of them. And then at the Central Classic in 2015, there's 3 Kiddo Bounces we're going to show here. So, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame someday. He deserves it. He's climbed up the leading sire charts as well. And I'm interested to see, I think his mares will become great brood mares as well. There's one of his Get a Sire pictures. And there's one at the Futurity. Of course, there we got Larry Gibson, C.A. Good, Tammy Verzi, and Jackie Guthrie. So a lot of POA knowledge in that picture. And 3 leopards, Kiddo Bounces. So that was just a quick run of Kiddo Bounce. And again, he didn't get started. Jackie went and got him back, found him when he was like 10 years old or so, and built a broodmare band around him. Kid Rock is for sale and is a well-broke gelding currently. Yep, he is. If you see his ad on Facebook, so hopefully he's got his pedigree on there, Tracy. I'm just kidding, his papers. So there we go. Here's some more pictures. This is Shingletons I was talking about. Look at that little mare there. She's not a big mare. And that's Doc's I'm Not Tough. She's a Rough and Tough daughter, so she'd be a Kiddo granddaughter. And then, of course, that's her baby, Guaranteed Tough Love. Charlene affectionately calls her Lovey. And then there's a picture, a nice side shot. Her ears ain't up, but I included it anyway because Charlene sent it to me, and it shows the great conformation of that mare. This is a Rough and Tough daughter, I believe. I think it was a Pal, like Pal Poco or something like that. Jeannie Stucker sent that one to me. And then Shannon Clark sent this to me. I think this is a rough and tough. And again, I apologize if I didn't get all the pictures in that you sent me, but I did show over 100 pictures tonight. So we're about ready to wrap it up, everybody. It's almost 8 o'clock. So this is a CR Star Kid that Jackie used as a broodmare. I believe this is Strand of Pearls. Look at that beautiful little head, loud color. This is the Cherokee Kid here. This was, I named him after, Rogers. Not Roy Rogers, the other one, was the Cherokee Kid was his nickname. And then, of course, Lynn was in Cherokee, Lynn Puffenberger. So Will Rogers. So a lot of people don't realize his nickname was the Cherokee Kid. And then I found this one's mother that Dave and Bonnie Morris had bred and had it at Lynn's as a baby. And my dad broke down when we were in the hauling business up by Blackwell, and I brought a transmission down to him. I've told this story on here before. And we looked at their babies, or Lynn's babies, and we picked out that one. I think we hurt Lynn a little bit because she looked like a quarter horse filly. And we bought her for real cheap from Dave and Bonnie, raised her up, and her first foal was the Cherokee Kid, and that was by Kiddo. So I believe he's in Alaska now, if he's still alive. He'd be 20 years old. And Shannon bought him from me at the sale. I think he brought about $2,000 as a baby, which was pretty good for my babies at the sale. By the time, you take pictures and all the shots and everything, you guys know how it works. It wasn't a lot of extra money, but so all right, I'm glad I got that in. That was some of the extras there. So all right, everybody, I want to thank my sponsors again tonight. Of course, we're always sponsored by Jackson's Auto Family.
Come join the family.
As we're sitting in Studio J. And then Albie, thank you Albie Horn for sponsoring tonight with your beautiful filly. TC, Bling It On Weedo. I had to practice that a little bit because, you want to say bring and then you want to say maybe not it, or blame it, So anyway, TC, Bling It On Weedo. I think she's got a great future ahead of her. And I think Albie will probably get some more POAs. I know she had POAs before this one. So thanks again for being the sponsor. And we'll go up here to the headshot of Kiddo. There we go. Jackie Guthrie took that against that red barn right there. So again, sponsorships. If you guys want to... Oh, Albie named her. Okay, Tracy's saying Albie named her. That's why it's okay. But she got the Weedo in there. Is that in your contract, Tracy, that you got to have Weedo in the names? I would think it probably is. So, again, sponsorships, if you guys can do it, we need, to get all the classes sponsored at the Congress is like $30-some thousand, but it's such a boost for the show. And the awards, they do a great job. Shingletons do a great job with the awards and stuff. So Tulsa will be no different. There will be good awards at that show. So please contact my wife, Monica, my beautiful wife, and make her day. Then she'll make me a beautiful, great supper, because she got a couple sponsorships that day. I don't think we've got any in a week. So May 20th is the deadline. If you already committed, pledged, I call it, you can pledge tonight. This is almost like a telethon. I feel like Jerry Lewis. You come pledge and you don't have to pay till May 20th. So, and then of course, tune in. The next couple weeks are going to be some great episodes. We have a young guest next week, a youth. That's what it's all about. So Campbell Cornelius will be our guest live via the phone. And then in a couple weeks after that, we'll have Kevin Jewell live from the phone. Excuse me. And we do have a couple other shows in between there. So my goal is to do as many shows as I can this year. So I think I'm going to probably set the record, hopefully. I know I'm going to beat last year's for sure. So this was episode number 78, the legendary Sire Kiddo Tough. So I hope all you guys enjoyed this. Thank you for all the comments. Please view some of the other episodes. A lot of them have over 600 episodes. Did you notice that I posted, I think last night or maybe Sunday night, that we've now hit over 50,000 views from the episodes just from out of this studio here. That's not counting YouTube, and we're just getting going. Monica's putting all of them on YouTube. Most of them are on there. The last couple ain't on there yet, but they will be. But so that's not counting YouTube videos. That's just counting the views from Facebook. So our 78 shows have garnered over 50,000 views. That's good publicity. So thank you guys for doing that and sharing it with people. All right, everybody, enjoy the song. See you next Tuesday.